I have just finished knitting one sleeve of my sweater here. I've ended it with 20 rounds of 1x1 ribbing, and I want to do a stretchy bind off, but I don't want something that is going to flare out the cuff, and I also don't want to spend the time doing an Italian tubular bind off. So I'm going to use a method called the Ruke bind off, which is a tubular style bind off, but we're not going to have all of the complexity of doing the Italian bind off. It's just one step repeated over and over again, with just 2 steps to set it up. So let me show you how to set it up and then how we go all the way around. In order to set up for this bind off, I'm going to determine how much yarn I need to use, and that would be 3 times the length that I'm going. So we've got 1, 2, and then 3 times around, and I'll give myself just a couple extra inches here. And then we are done with that part, and now I can thread my yarn onto my darning needle. The next step is actually performing 2 of the bind off stitches, but instead of just binding them off and dropping them off of our needle here, we're going to put them onto our right hand needle so that we can bind them off a second time when we come back. Now I'm going to take my darning needle from right to left, and I'm going to go purlwise through all 3 stitches, just like this, and I'm going to pull all of my yarn through, and then for this first stitch I'm just going to slip that purlwise onto my right hand needle. I'm going to do that one more time, go through all 3 stitches, pull that through, and then I'm going to take 1 stitch from my left hand needle and slip it purlwise onto my right hand needle. Now that's it for my right hand needle. I'm just going to stick it into my fabric so my yarn doesn't get caught. And that was our setup. And now we can get into the actual Ruke bind off, which is the same as our setup, except instead of moving the stitches from our left hand needle to our right hand needle, we're just going to drop the stitches off our needle, one at a time. So we're going to go through 3 stitches from right to left, pull through all of our yarn, make it a little bit snug but not too snug, and then drop off 1 stitch. And now you can see my tail is coming through the side of the second stitch here. So I'm going to go through all 3 stitches, 1, 2, and 3, and pull through. And so we're actually working through all of our stitches 3 times, which is why we need 3 times the length of our project as a tail to begin with. And it's creating a sort of tubular style, but we're not going back and forth like the Italian tubular cast off, and we also don't need to do any setup rounds. We're going to repeat this the entire way around the cuff. And I really like the Ruke bind off because it really is so straightforward, but it gives a very clean finish to our work. And the stitches look as if they're rolling over the cuff, just like you would with the Italian tubular bind off. You do that because it gives a very clean finish to your work, and it's also very stretchy, which is something that I am looking for in a cuff. So you can see that is how our work is looking. We are maintaining our stretch, but it's not going to flare at the end, and it'll also block out very beautifully. I'm going to go all the way around until we get just 3 stitches left over here, and I'll show you how to complete this. I have actually 4 stitches remaining. 2 of them I have not worked before, but remember this stitch and this stitch we transferred to this needle at the beginning of our work. So the way that I'm going to work this is just by going again through all 3 stitches, dropping 1 off, and then all 3 stitches. And then when I'm at the end, I'm just going to drop all of them off because I've already gone through those 2 stitches. And then the next part is just to weave in my end. And I sort of just honestly, this sounds horrible. I sort of just guess where it goes. I get a feel for what looks best. And then I'm just going to run this down on the inside here. I've never had my tails come out of my work when I weave my ends in like this. I'm just going to wrap them around like so, and then the other way, gonna wrap up over here. And then tuck it back in. I will trim that. And that is how much we had left. So that's why I add a couple extra inches on when I'm doing the bind off initially. And here is what my cuff looks like. So you can see it gives a really nice rolled edge to my work. It maintains its stretch and elasticity, and it works very well on a 1x1 rib. It also works on a 2x2, and it also works flat. So I already bound off the bottom ribbing of this cardigan, and I did it with the Ruke Bind off in flat knitting instead of in the round like this. They look very similar, and I love how it turned out. And here is how the cuff looks when it's on my hand. I do have a watch under here. That's why it's a little bit bulky. Beautiful. So I hope you liked that tutorial, and I really do hope that you use the Ruke Bind off in any one of your upcoming projects, whether you're working in the round or you're working flat. I think it's a beautiful technique that is simple for anybody to learn. And if you do want to do a tubular cast off, but you're not looking to do the Italian tubular cast off, I think this is a great substitution for that.